Good morning. It's a rainy morning here in Pikeville, Kentucky, with part of Michael hitting into us a little bit. This is episode 49 of October 11th of the Philip Koerper Show. I'm Philip Koerper. Just got a fast-paced show for you today. Hurricane Michael came in, hit the panhandle of Florida with incredible winds. And I think once we see some of the damage today, it's going to be pretty startling. I saw yesterday houses literally just the roofs being blown right off, the roofs being blown off, houses being blown down, buildings being blown down, and tremendous winds, incredible destruction. And so our prayers are with the people of Florida, and then the storm moved into central Georgia. So I love how Americans will rally around those people who are suffering from the storms and try to reach out to them. I love how our church, the Church of Jesus Christ, the Latter-day Saints, mobilizes. We put those yellow T-shirts on and try to go down and visit and try to help. I know our church opens up our churches, of course, that are not destroyed, and for people to live in until they find shelter again. The stock market went down yesterday quite a bit. The Dow Jones went down 831 points. You know, they always make all these arguments, and everyone tries to theorize why these are happening. Amazon, Facebook techs went down worse. Their worst decrease in 7 years. So there's definitely a little bit of a shakeup there. Trump is kind of pointing to the Federal Reserve a little bit to wait and see how that settles down. Donald Trump gave an exclusive interview. I love how he does this just with Fox, with Shannon Bream, and talked a little bit. Everyone's talking about Nikki Haley's departure from the UN. You know, it's just funny. As I said yesterday, we really don't care about the United Nations. Sometimes I think we can use it as a platform, but usually the rest of the world just uses it to just beat up on us. So I think that it's sad that this idea of nations coming together to prevent war, this idea hasn't quite worked out. I was reading in the scriptures yesterday. There are lots of scriptures that talk about nations, and God talks about nations with alliances and nations fighting nations. Apparently, nation and nationalism is a big part of history, of course, but it seems like it's something that God expects us to do as people, with our tribalism, to have like-minded people live in a certain place and to live by certain ideals. That's a huge reason why I'm so grateful that I was born in the United States of America. I really do feel that this is the promised land that God can bless us as a nation as we work for good and take good care of our neighbor and do these things, not through government necessarily, but through charity and through freedom and voluntary means. Judge Kavanaugh is on the bench. Apparently he had a really good day yesterday. It's interesting, there's some ethics charges, of course, against him. And Judge Roberts, usually what happens is that this goes to the chief judge of the D.C. Circuit. Well, that happens to be Merrick Garland. And so Merrick Garland, he declined to receive these ethics complaints. And so anyhow, Chief Judge Roberts sent them to, I'm not quite sure why, but the Denver-based 10th Circuit, which usually these cases, wherever the states they originate in, that's where they go. So I guess if these come from Connecticut, it's unsure where these are coming from. I couldn't figure that out. But they're coming from Connecticut or Maryland, they would go, I guess, to the D.C. Circuit. Well, anyhow, they're going to go way out to Denver, to the 10th Circuit, handles cases originating in Colorado, Kansas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Utah, and Wyoming. Anyhow, it's funny. Well, the guy out there, the judge out there, his name is Timothy Kovach. He is the chief judge out there in the 10th Circuit, and he is on President Trump's list of possible Supreme Court nominees. So out they go there. We'll see what happens. Usually nothing happens with that. Speaking of Judge Kavanaugh, Christy Blasey Ford, she was nominated for the University of North Carolina Distinguished Alumni Award. Okay, after publicly coming forward with allegations of sexual misconduct. Wow. Well, there you go. It's a Daily Caller reporting on that. They're just praising her, how she came forth. And so the University of North Carolina is going to give her a reward for that, an award. There you go. Okay. Now, no one's talking about this mob rule thing, okay? Yeah. So it's funny, when the Tea Party was organizing years ago, Rand Paul, a big part of that. It was really exciting as the Republicans kind of fought back within the Republican Party for more control. The left, some people on the left were calling them mobs. But of course, no one is calling the Democrats going crazy now mobs. They won't use the M word. No, no, no. Tucker Carlson is making fun of that. It's really amazing what the former Attorney General Eric Holder is saying. He goes, no. You've heard the saying, like, when they go low, we go high. And he goes, no. When they go low, we kick them. Okay. So lots more rhetoric from the left on this. It's really pretty sad. Now, in all fairness, a Democrat is pushing back. Heidi Heitkamp, Democrat senator of North Dakota, she's pushing back on this, and then she says we need more civility on both sides of the aisle. Hillary Clinton didn't help with this when she was talking about how we can't be civil. Democrats can't be civil until the Democrats take over the House or the Senate. So lots of criticism from the Democrat, pointed at the Democrat leadership, or these prominent Democrats who are not calling for civility, causing for kicking. Cory Booker, senator from New Jersey, talked about. He said we need to get in the face of Republicans. So lots of rhetoric. Rand Paul is voicing his concerns. He's afraid someone will be assassinated if we continue this rhetoric up. So lots of stuff going back and forth on the campaign thing. It's really interesting to see this Kavanaugh effect. Many senators, tight Senate races are opening up for the Republicans. It does look like the Republicans got a boost from the Kavanaugh nomination hearings, and I think that makes sense to me, because I really feel that the Democrats really overplayed their hand, and by supporting a lot of these allegations from decades ago that had no corroborating evidence and that had many holes in their stories. So I think most Americans are seeing through that. I think the same thing happened when the Republicans went after Bill Clinton in the impeachment hearings for lying under oath. I think the same thing happened, that the Democrats got a boost from that. It's interesting, there's a story in Fox News about this Chinese spy case. I mean, this is really fascinating, and this is going to, I think, become a really major story about how China is really infiltrating the United States through our educational systems. I mean, go to any university. There are people from China all over the place. This is a story about a Chinese spy was trying to steal trade secrets from American aviation and aerospace companies. Okay, so he's been charged and extradited to the United States. The extradition of Yanjun Shu, Deputy Division Director of the Chinese Ministry of State Security on Tuesday, was an unprecedented move that exposes the Chinese government's direct oversight of economic espionage against the United States. So this is from an FBI counterintelligence division. Per the news, so the Justice Department said also he sought to steal trade secrets and other sensitive information from an American company that leads the way in aerospace. Okay, so we talked about the little computer chip that they were putting in motherboards. So the Chinese, with their very powerful Politburo, very small group of people run that whole country. And they, many people believe that they are our number one threat. I really think that is true. Looking at this evidence that the Chinese are really focused on world domination, and they're stealing our trade secrets and technology that we produce here in the United States. This is a fascinating story about Susan Rice's son. I didn't know this, but her son is a big-time Republican, and he's at Stanford. And so anyhow, his name is John David Rice Cameron, and he is the president of the Stanford College Republicans. All right, good for him. John David, yeah. Okay, I guess his mom's not super excited about that, but that's the way it goes. And so John David is pressing charges against a liberal student who allegedly hit him and forcefully pushed him back during a pro-Brett Kavanaugh event Tuesday afternoon. Well, we've seen lots of video of these pro-Kavanaugh people with their signs up, and then other people coming and knocking the signs out of their hands or tearing up their signs. Okay, yikes. I mean, no civility. Okay, I guess HRC is signing off on this. Tear up the signs. We're not gonna do this. So apparently this was a change my mind table, okay, where this altercation occurred. And then John David said, nobody should be assaulted on campus under any circumstances. A student was placed under a private person arrest and issued a citation for battery in response to Rice Cameron's allegations, according to Stanford Department of Public Safety. Ooh, they're reviewing the case. So that is fascinating. Where is the civility? No, when we go low, they're going to just kick us. Looks like it's lots of rhetoric here. Speaking of that, this is kind of a scary story from Fox News about they arrested a man and he had a 200-pound bomb in his house, and he was going to use this at the National Mall in Washington on Election Day. Okay, supposedly he was going to blow up himself and try to blow up others. So anyhow, the Department of Justice was tipped off from him when he was planning to build an explosive device. And he wanted to draw attention to his political belief in sortation. Do you guys know what sortation is? I mean, I had never even, I don't think, ever heard of this word before. Sortation is an ancient Greek method of randomly selecting government officials. Well, the guy's no laughing matter, but this sortation process is kind of interesting. I think a lot of Americans probably do this by either not voting or they just randomly go in and pick candidates. So anyhow, kudos to the DOJ for nailing this guy. It's really pretty scary. There is another story that I think has people kind of wondering when Director Christopher Wray, he is the director of the FBI. You might not even know his name. Okay, James Comey is gone. The guy who was talking all the time and drawing a lot of attention to himself. He's gone. He's wrote his book. He's making his money that way. Christopher Wray is more soft-spoken. Donald Trump picked this guy. And he was sharing to the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee that there are threats against the homeland. And he said, right now, as I sit here, we're currently investigating about 5,000 terrorism cases across America and around the world. And about 1,000 of those cases are homegrown violent extremists. And they're in all 50 states. In the last year or so, we've made hundreds of arrests of terrorism subjects. That's scary. He talks about ISIS still being a menace. And a lot of these people are homegrown extremists. Okay, so very scary. This militant Islamic terrorism, crazy idea is still out there. So I'm grateful for the FBI and Christopher Wray for working hard on this. We have to, I think, be very careful. In our immigration policies, I think we need to be very careful. We're one big attack away from, Americans really being a lot more careful about terrorism and those kind of ideas. This is a story from Fox News on what happened in Great Britain. Is pretty interesting. Britain's Supreme Court rules bakery didn't discriminate in gay cake case. So anyhow, they're taking looking at America and following our example. And so this story says Britain's Supreme Court reversed a lower court Wednesday and ruled that a bakery owned by a Christian family didn't discriminate against a gay customer when it refused to make a cake in 2014 of Sesame Street characters Bert and Ernie. Hey Bert, and a phrase, support gay marriage. Okay, so it's good. I'm glad. Even in atheist Great Britain, where atheism is a big deal, they ruled in favor of freedom and liberty. Wow, that's interesting because Google's really going after the European tradition, of decency and civility. Okay, but no freedom and liberty. It looks like the Europeans are clawing on to some freedom and liberty there. I think that's awesome. And then I wanted to finish with my last story is the M word. The M word is mob. Okay, a Daily Caller article talks about how media outlets are scrambling to get away from the use of the word mob to describe the protests that disrupted Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh's initial Senate Judiciary Committee hearings. What many of them appear to have forgotten is that less than a decade ago, many of them sat silent and agreed as protesters aligned with the Tea Party were described as the same terms or worse. That's what I mentioned earlier. And so there are a lot of quotes in here from 2011. Breaking news, White House compares Occupy Wall Street to Tea Party. I don't understand why one man's mob is another man's democracy. Okay. So there are lots of different quotes where they were used. They're calling them barbarians at the gates. Okay, lots of criticism of the Tea Party back then from the left. Of course, now when the left is going crazy, I think more so than the Tea Party, no, it's going to be a double standard there. I wanted to close with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. It's an awesome quote. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Philip Koerper Show. I'm Philip Koerper. This show is found on iTunes and SoundCloud. Also on YouTube. You search the Philip Koerper Show. And also at my website, philkoerper.com. You guys have a great day. Thanks.